So far in this series, we've met personalities who tend to reflect one aspect or one era of Formula One. But today we've come to Spain to meet a man whose career embraces just about everything. From Fangio and Enzo Ferrari to Senna and Prost, Hakkinen and beyond. Mechanic, team coordinator, team manager, a true architect of Formula One, Jo Ramirez. Jo Ramirez is best remembered as the man at the heart of the great years of McLaren, the fixer and sometimes peacemaker between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. But before that had come team manager experience with Emerson Fittipaldi, Francois Sever, Ken Tyrrell and Dan Gurney, and his enthusiastic support for the young Mexican driver Ricardo Rodriguez. He has a vast range of memories and experience, and a few souvenirs as well.
And now we have in the Grand Prix room.
Oh, the Grand Prix. A small room, but this is an absolute treasure trove. It tells not only the story of your career, but really the history of Grand Prix motor racing in many ways. You're a steering wheel man.
Of the many things I could collect in racing, steering wheels, that was the one I much like, because it's something tangible that the drivers have.
Yeah, it's got their
imprint. In those days, they were proper steering wheels. Nowadays, they're airplane wheels. I mean, this, for example, is Jack Brabham, which we use all of the year of this championship. Nowadays, they take them every race, they change them. So this is one of my favorites. That one there, Jim Clark, the Lotus 49, winning the Dutch Grand Prix, yep. the first race of the Cosworth engine.
Francois Sever up here.
Francois Sever, Ben, because of an accident he had 2 weeks before his fatal accident at Mosport. That was that. Bruce McLaren, obviously always one of favorites of mine. Dan Gurney, this is the wheel that he used on his 1967 Spa win.
Oh, the actual Belgian Grand Prix win?
The Belgian Grand Prix, which was the first Grand Prix I was involved in. Then, of course, Pedro Rodriguez, which is...
in a way, where it all began. And behind you, this is where it all finished with this wonderful tribute from McLaren for all your years with the Formula One team.
This is my pride and joy, because I couldn't believe they actually gave them to me. 3,500 hours of work. He's won a lot of prizes on silver and gilt workmanship, so it's fantastic.
And even in this collection, that's not the pièce de résistance, because that's inside the cabinet here, the Senna and Prost memorabilia. And the overalls, which were probably not quite that shoulder to shoulder during all the time they were together in the McLaren team.
I think in here I like to have them together, because they were such a fantastic in the sport, and they had so much respect for each other that for me they were always the best two, and they should be friends.
Fascinating times. We look forward to hearing all the stories about what went on behind the scenes, the driving gloves and the shoes, and I mean, such authenticity there. But there is one other yellow helmet, and really that's where it all began for you.
Yeah, this is it. That was Ricardo Rodriguez helmet, which he used in some tests prior to his fatal accident in Mexico. He used it with Ferrari, and that's his goggles, and this one probably used them in the whole year, as you can see. It's pretty old.
And there's no protection there at all. Yeah, that's the early 60s. Takes you back to the start of your career. So let's hear what was going on with the Rodriguez brothers and the kind of introduction they provided for you and Grand Prix motor racing. So, Jo, back in Mexico City, late 50s, early 60s, I suppose the Rodriguez brothers were your ticket to the wide world of motorsport. But what sort of motorsport ambitions did you have as a young man?
Actually, I wanted to be a driver as well. I used to I did some go-kart races with Pedro and Ricardo. I was never as quick as them or as good as them, but anyway, that was what I wanted to do. I was learning, and I initially came to Ricardo when he first got the contract with Ferrari in 1962. That was his first Formula One season.
But to take yourself from Mexico City to Italy, I mean, that wasn't particularly straightforward. So how did you organise that?
Well, on those days, it was kind of the planes starting to come up and cross the Atlantic, but it was very expensive, a plane ticket. But the boat, it was much more reasonable, and, you know, I had all the time in the year. So a friend of mine that his father worked in the government, he kind of swindled me a ticket to New York. And then I bought $200 ticket on tourist class on the Queen Elizabeth, New York to Southampton, you know. And then I hitchhiked from London all the way to Targa Florio, to Sicily.
For the young student with a passion for all things racing, the journey from Mexico City to Sicily was a challenge. But progress after that was swift. Rodriguez was driving for Ferrari. And for his compatriots so keen to help, the important introductions came thick and fast. The management team of Forghieri and Dragoni, and most significantly, Enzo Ferrari himself.
Enzo Ferrari was an incredible personality, you know. He was the sort of person that when you walk in the workshop, everything was quiet. You could hear a fly on the wall. The commendator is here, you know. They command such a respect, and he did so much, and he was mostly right in most of his decisions, but that he was well and admired by everybody that worked for him, you know. And even to these days, for any racing driver, get to Ferrari is just very special, you know.
And at the same time, the other big name in the sport in that period, Fangio. I think, did he provide some assistance along the way?
Yes, it was fantastic. Fangio, I met him with Ricardo. He was due to come to Modena at some stage, and he said, well, when you go to Modena, I'm going to be there. I know he gave me some dates and look for me. And I went to the Real Fini Hotel, where he normally stay, and Fangio wasn't there. And I was very disappointed, and the guy in the counter said, oh, who are you? I'm Joaquin or Ramirez, that was my, and before I become Joe, because my proper name is Joaquin. And, I had a letter for you. And he left a letter for me saying, I'm sorry, I couldn't make it to Modena, but take this letter to Engineer Alfieri in Maserati, and I'm sure he will look after him. Now, that was the sort of person that Fangio was.
The death of Ricardo Rodriguez the following year was a first experience of the perilous nature of the sport in the 60s, but for Ramirez the door had been opened and the opportunities followed, with Maserati and Lamborghini, and also with sports car racing, the Ford GT40s and the Gulf Porsches. But in the midst of this, the most important opportunity came from Dan Gurney, trying to make an American breakthrough in Formula One.
I met Dan when I was going to the races with Ricardo Rodriguez and Baghetti and Phil Heaton. And I remember I used to drive to the races with Giancarlo Baghetti on his Ferrari, and we got to Nürburgring a bit early, and he wanted to do some laps in the circuit on his own Ferrari to learn the circuit and whatever. And in the evening, there was only a few drivers that arrived, and Dan was one of them. So we had dinner together, and that's when I first met Dan Gurney, and we got on very well. He said to me, well, I'm due to start a Grand Prix team in England. Would you like to come with me? Say the word, I'm in it. And he did, and then it was Mike Lohmann and Tim Wall, and I was the third. We had three mechanics, and
such an exciting project, based down at Rye in Sussex.
Yeah. I think the whole team was about 10 people. I mean, it's incredible. Okay, we didn't do all the things that they do now, but it was fantastic. And Dan was one of the best bosses I've ever had, and someone that it's nice to work for somebody that you know that you can put your 100%, and he gets in the car and he's going to put 120%. And Dan was one of them. A brilliant driver, you know. But so many things that he started and they still use now, and they still have the name, like the Gurney Flap.
Gurney Flap, yeah.
And he was also the very first one to start spraying the champagne.
Yes.
And when he won Le Mans, and then everybody carried on since then.
And of course the highlight for the All-American racing team and the Eagle Westlake was that Belgian Grand Prix, which was your first Grand Prix success, and of course a famous one for American racing as well. What do you remember about that weekend at Spa?
Well, I remember that at one stage, Dan came in, you know, the pits, how they were, you know, you were in the middle of the track. And he came in before and he said, I have no fuel pressure. Of course, we didn't have contact with the driver on those days. He said, okay, what can we do? You know, so we prepare something in case we'll come in and trying to repair. Maybe. But then he lost some time by coming in and slow down. He was behind Clark, and Clark had a problem with the plugs. Clark stopped and then went on to win.
Anyone involved in motor racing had to come to terms with the fatalities that were so commonplace. Pedro Rodriguez, Ricardo's elder brother, was to lose his life. Ramirez would experience the loss of 2 more drivers in sports car racing. And the death of Joe Siffert at Brands Hatch added to the pain that everyone in the sport had to handle in their own different way.
It's hard, you know. You try not to get emotionally involved with drivers because they come and go. But you can't. They are people, and you know, you have a work relation between the driver and mechanic that is very special. And so you do become very involved.
And that was part of your job. You moved on from there to Ken Tyrrell, which was a great move and a great man to work for. I was thinking, what was your job description? What was your brief there?
I was second on Francois Severt's car the first year, and then I was in charge of Francois Severt the second year, when unfortunately he lost his life. But you know, working for Ken, he was just fantastic. You don't only learn about racing cars, you learn about life. Going to dinner with Ken, he was fantastic. You talk about everything. He had always fantastic jokes, and he just loved the life and loved his job. And he treats everybody like his sons or his brothers. He was superb.
So with Ken Tyrrell in the early 70s, supreme drivers, an inspirational team boss, more race-winning glory, but ultimately further tragedy. Jo Ramirez, mechanic, engineer and team manager, had experienced the thrill of Grand Prix success with Dan Gurney, and more was promised when he joined Tyrrell in 1972. Ken Tyrrell was one of the great team bosses, and Jackie Stewart would be heading to his 3rd World Championship, partnered by his hugely talented young protege, Francois Severt.
They both were so close friends. They go to holidays together, they have a dinner together at the racetrack, and Francois was learning from him, and he was very happy to be second to Jackie until Jackie decided to stop. Unfortunately, he never knew that that year Jackie was going to stop. I remember an incident in the Dutch Grand Prix where they were first and second all the race, and at one time Jackie missed the gear going into Tarzan, and Francois waited till he didn't pass him. And then as they stopped, I came up to Francois to take his belts off, and Jackie got up first and got up quick and said, "You're an idiot, why didn't you pass me? It was your opportunity." Yes, but I could miss gears as well. I didn't want to pass you because you missed the gear or you made a mistake. I want to pass you when I'm better than you. You know, that was the
sort of hero
camaraderie
worship there
that exists there.
I mean, was Jackie, I mean, he was learning a great deal from him, but,
Yeah.
but there was a sort of hero worship there, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely, yes, very much.
But he had no idea that Jackie was about to quit the sport when you headed to Watkins Glen. How did you learn?
But none of us
Nobody
knew that. And he said to me, "Is this the steering wheel that I've been using this year?" And I said, "Yes." So he said, "Oh, I like to keep it if you don't mind." "Oh, well, it can be arranged." So I thought, I wonder why he wanted this particular wheel. It was his last race, and it would have been his 100th Grand Prix, but
And that was as close as he came to telling you,
didn't
this is my last race.
Yes, I didn't know, and we knew after that that was it. That was his last race, and
then the awful events of that weekend, Francois losing his life, and I mean the effect on Jackie. We've talked to Jackie about that, but it went through the whole of the sport, didn't it?
Yeah, yes. It was such a. It was loved by everybody. I mean, his looks, his eyes, his everything. He was the epitome of the racing driver. Although he could have been a film star, he had looks enough to be. But everybody liked him, and he was such an open character. There was no hidden things on Francois. He was so open, the guy, and loved by women and everyone. I remember at the time they took the rest of the car down to a Watkins Glen garage, and Ken, of course, he asked Roger and Roland and myself to go down and look at the car and see if we can find anything. There is so many things on the racing car that something could be fallen and maybe still look like a driver error.
For Ramirez, the rest of the 70s would include character-building experiences at the other end of the grid, with teams like ATS, Shadow and Theodore, and a particular challenge with Emerson Fittipaldi, as he tried to establish Copersucar in the sport.
The problems we had with the government to getting permission to import things like the fuel cells, like the brakes, the engines, all these sort of things, you know. We're doing something for the national
sort of pride and identity,
of the country. And Emerson, to give him his due, a lovely guy and fantastic racing driver. But as a businessman, he never got it together. I don't know. Wilson was much tougher. And the fights that they had between Emerson and Wilson, wow, it's unbelievable. I used to close the door, stay behind. But yes, we had a lot of problems up and down. I lost my hair there. I used to have lots of hair. And
the manner in which Ramirez had tackled such a variety of problems down the years had made him one of the most familiar and popular figures in the pit lane. And at the end of 1983 came his reward, the invitation from Ron Dennis to join a McLaren team poised for the greatest era in their history.
I knew Ron from the beginning when he was a mechanic for Cooper Maserati and Brabham, and I was with Shadow and other teams, and we were friends. We used to play squash every weekend when we were not racing, and he offered me a job when he took McLaren, I think it was, yes, in 81, and I said, sorry, Ron, I'm very happy where I am, and I didn't take the job. Next year or the year after, down the road, everything was going into turbos. We didn't have a turbo. So the chance for us, we were going to close. I was going to go to the United States. I had some good offers there, which I didn't want to do. And I was kicking myself, God, I should have taken the job. But I was a little bit, I don't know, pride. I didn't really want to call Ron. He still have a job for me, you know. And the phone rang again. I was lucky. As I said, the postman rang twice.
And a great time to join them as well. You were there as team coordinator, which
I was a team coordinator. In those days,
which meant what? Just about everything.
Very small, and of course, Ron was the team manager and the team boss, and Ron did all the big things, the big contracts, and I used to do the rest. And it was good. You can't believe when you get into McLaren after being in ATS and Theodore and Shadow with no money, and then suddenly Ron said, "You need it, you get it. Don't worry about the money. I worry about the money. Just get it. We got to have the best of everything."
And you had the best drivers at that time as well. Niki Lauda and Alain Prost was your first driver combination, which was, when you came into it, an interesting chemistry, I would think.
Very much. I think Alain was so much quick in the racetrack, but outside the car, Niki just was so strong, you know, so that...
How do you mean? Or politically? Or
not just political, but only it's because of what he did, because he was a world champion, because he was his accident and he came back, you know. He had that thing around him that he could allow himself not being as quick as Alain. But the same thing, he was probably a more complete racing driver. No doubt Alain learned a lot of Niki on those days. So, but the combination was fantastic, and they get on really well.
The climax to the 1984 season would test the diplomacy of any team coordinator. Prost had won 7 races, Lauda 5. But Lauda would take the title from Prost by a mere half a point, amid agonising tension in Estoril.
Niki had to finish second. There was nothing else but second. And then from 11 he started carving his way, and some people fell on, and he was third. But he was a Lotus in front. Anyway, he was, third, I just need one, He was praying in the car, and then suddenly a black car stopped in the track. Was that Nigel? And then, no, he was, then the board, you're second. No, that can't be my board. Am I second? You know?
Lauda now in second position, behind Alain Prost.
And the next time around, he was very careful, saying, God, yes, it is Nigel. Bloody hell, I'm second, you know. And then, the engine started sounding. The brake pedal is very low, and the engine is It's nothing. It's all. He's just imagining the things. He just couldn't believe, and finally second.
There he is. There is Niki Lauda, the 1984 world champion.
And you get to share in a world championship. And what was the feeling of that like, and the celebration like? Because you became pretty famous for the kind of after championship parties you organised and the celebrations you organised. What was the first one like?
The motto at McLaren is we work hard and we play hard. I just thought, you know, this will never happen. We won 12 out of 16 races. You know, nobody ever done that before, and nobody's going to do it again. But then again, 4 years later, we won 15 out of 16.
But did you come away from that season with the feeling that, yeah, Lauda is a champion, but Prost is the man who is going to dominate the next few years?
Yes, that was very much what we all thought, and what it happened, in fact.
The champion was Lauda, but the future was Prost, underlined by his own championship success in 1985 and 1986. McLaren reigned supreme, and to strengthen their dominance on the horizon was Ayrton Senna. McLaren, with Jo Ramirez as team coordinator and Alain Prost behind the wheel, had taken the driver's title in 1985 and, courtesy of Nigel Mansell's Adelaide blowout, in 1986 as well. The next year it was Williams who set the pace, but for 88 McLaren would have a powerful but volatile driver lineup with the arrival of Ayrton Senna, a talent that Ramirez and everyone else had long been aware of.
I was testing with Coppersuca in Silverstone with Emerson, and we were in the motorhome, and Ayrton came and to say hello to Emerson. So Emerson introduced it to me, and we had a chat. And when he left the motorhome, Emerson said to me, "You keep watching this guy; he's going to become one of the greatest in the sport." He never said more true words, isn't he? He's just a guy that had everything. I mean, believe me, he would have been successful in whatever walk of life he wanted to go, whichever career, because he was just one of those guys. He applied himself to the job like you've never seen
Almost
anybody.
obsessive.
Yeah.
So when he came to McLaren to partner Alain Prost in 1988, did you think, you know, on a personal level, you know, this is going to be a bit of a challenge this year, or were you excited about the prospect?
Oh, we were excited. For sure, we knew it was going to be fireworks, but we were expecting it, you know. And Ron was expecting it too, because you can manage them for a while, but after a while, you have a time bomb, you know, ready to go in any time, and eventually did.
So was your role to sort of initially keep the peace between them, be even-handed in the way that you treated both Alain and Ayrton, or were you one side or the other?
No, not at all. He was always exactly the same in both. And I was kind of, by the time that Ayrton came, I had a few years with Alain and looking after him and all the things. I mean, people said, why did you manage to be friends with both of them? But for me, it was easy because I made the things easier for them in the race. They made favors to me. You know, I used to go to my place in Saint-Tropez, to Nice, with the Ayrton plane and things like that. But it was Ron that did the contracts. Ron that fight with them with the money and the tough decisions. But for me, I just look after them in whatever they need.
A 3-point margin would give Senna the title in 1988, but all through the season he would feel the pressure and the presence of Alain Prost. Never more so than at Monaco, when Senna, with a massive lead but fearful of the Frenchman, made an astonishing mistake.
Ayrton had nearly a minute lead.
Senna leading by 40 seconds now, an enormous margin.
And then suddenly Alain went by Gerhard.
Prost is taken, he's done it! Prost has taken Berger.
And then start carving lap record after lap record, and taking 2-3 seconds a lap in Senna. And Ron just mad, he keeps shouting, he's not going to catch you, it's impossible, never catch you, slow down. And Alain kept going quicker, so he kept looking at the board. Alain closer and closer, and he lost control. He just got to port here and kicked the inside barrier.
That is Senna. Sensation. On lap 67, Ayrton Senna goes out of the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix at the Portier.
Conveniently, his flat was very close there, so he just walked to his flat and didn't contact us or anything. And I spent all afternoon, the rest of the afternoon, ringing, and first they didn't answer anybody. Later on, they answered, and it was Isabel, I think was her name, the lady that looked after the flat. And he said, Isabel, tell him it's Jo, I want to talk to him. No one else, it's Jo. No, Senor Ayrton is not here. Said, oh, come on, I know he's here. And every time I ring, he said to me the same. Finally, at 9 o'clock, he said, please, Isabel, I know he's there. And then I heard Ayrton, yes, give me the phone. And he was still crying at that time. He said, I don't know what happened. I must be the most idiot man in the world. He said, the steering wheel came off my hand when he hit. It didn't come off his hand, but he said that was the expression that he said when he hit so hard on from that he had to take his hands off. It's just over. There's one of those mistakes that he wouldn't, I'm sure, he'd never forgotten and never forgive himself. But he punished himself so much after he make an error.
Did it surprise you the way, the depth of his reaction? Did you see that as maybe a problem looming for the future?
Yes, and it was one of the things. His big downfalls was his lack of patience. He was very impatient. He lost races by being impatient.
Whereas Alain Prost was completely the opposite. And I suppose that got to Ayrton as well, that he could manufacture results and compile points.
Yeah.
Estoril, later in that season, there was that heart-stopping moment where Ayrton almost pushed Alain into the wall. How did the team react to what they saw?
That was very close. They didn't touch, but if they touched, one of them would have gone into the pit lane with all of the teams there. Would have been disaster.
So was it your job, or did you see it as your job to talk to Ayrton about the way he behaved in that race, or was there any kind of conversation about it?
Yes, we did. But obviously, as I said, the big reprimands and that they always came from Ron. And when he made a mistake, you couldn't say anything. He was so hard with himself that it was nothing to say. He just punished himself.
But it was also the sort of start of the breakdown of the relationship between Ayrton and Alain, was it?
I remember in Paul Ricard, where Alain did the qualifying, his lap, he was on pole, and he stopped the car and get off the car and, hey, go and change into these jeans and t-shirt. But what are you doing? You're crazy. Then you have another 3 sets of tires, and you still have an hour to go. And he said, yes, but if he can do a better lap than this, he deserves it. Mine was perfect. So when Ayrton see him on his t-shirts and watching the qualifying, he got angry, and the more he tried, the slower he got, and he didn't. Alain kept the pole.
It was 1989 at Imola that Ramirez and McLaren could keep the peace no longer. The two drivers had the agreement that they wouldn't race each other until after the first corner at Tosa in the San Marino Grand Prix. Senna had the better start, so Prost dutifully held station. Then came the huge fiery accident for Gerhard Berger, and after a long delay, the restart. This time Prost was quickest away, only for Senna to ignore the agreement and overtake him in uncompromising fashion at Tosa.
Alain was so sick that how could it? That was the agreement. You know, it was livid. It was just, and his whole race was bad. He spun twice. He still finished second, but he didn't go to the podium. He went off in a half, and I'd rather pay the $5,000. I cannot be in the podium. And Alain said some things in interviews, some big papers like L'Equipe, which was not pleasing to Ayrton, and then it was whole history. Then we used to have 2 debriefings, one for Alain, one for Ayrton. It was all very distraught.
But he was off to Ferrari, of course, and there was that incident with the Italian Grand Prix when he won in Italy and he dropped the trophy into the crowd. And Ron is quite protective of his trophies, isn't he?
Very much, very much. Alain, he's driving for Ferrari the next year. It's in Monza. All the crowd shouting, Copa, Copa. He just instinctively, he dropped it to the cloud. And I couldn't believe it. You know, I was there and, oh, wow. And then I went walking with Ron and said, Ron, please, you're taking it completely wrong. He says, no, what the line meant. Yes, he bloody well did. You know, this is how much we mean for him. And no, you must understand, he's Latin, he's going to drive for Ferrari next year. He did it instinctively. Nothing, disrespect for the team whatsoever. Ron was very upset, very upset.
So in a way, it was inevitable, the conclusion to that season. What did you make of what happened at the chicane in Suzuka? And I mean, the repercussions from that, as far as Ayrton were concerned, occupied you throughout the entire close season, I would think.
Yes, it was very heavy stuff.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. They meet. This is what we were fearing might happen during the race. And that means to say that Prost has won the World Championship.
I remember being sitting in the lunch at the airport the next day, and I said to Alain, you did the two biggest mistakes of your life. I said, why? He said, well, first of all, why did you go off the car? When, you know, they both shunted, and if they push both, Ayrton have to come and change the nose because the nose was destroyed, but your car was perfect. Yeah? Oh no, it was a big bang. It was a big bang, and the right wheel was like that. Yes, but the left wheel was also like that. He laughed, yeah. But in fact, his car had nothing. You know, he could stay in the car. They push both the drivers. They do the same thing. They probably didn't penalize anyone.
But instead, it was war with the FIA. And how much contact did you have with Ayrton during the close season then, and how busy did it become?
Well, quite a lot, because, you know, for everything that was said, and there was fines flowing to Ayrton, and he refused to come back, and he was going to drive in Indianapolis, and all these stories came up. So we were, well, Ronnie must have been talking to him almost daily.
Senna would, of course, return for the 1990 season, and with Prost at Ferrari, the arrival of Gerhard Berger at McLaren promised greater harmony within the team. After all the problems of the previous year, there was also an even greater respect from Ramirez for the McLaren boss, Ron Dennis.
I owe a lot of things to Ron. I learned a lot from Ron, and he was fantastic, but for me, he was the best in the business. Really was number one. Unfortunately, he had a way, I don't know, we will never know what he did to Max Mosley, why Max Mosley was so much hate towards Ron. I never know. I think he hasn't made many friends in his life, and I don't know why. It's because as an employer, believe me, he's the best in the world. You know, I can't tell you how many employees at McLaren he has bent himself backwards to help them on a personal problem, be their children, their wife, the girlfriend, or something. He had really bent himself backwards to help.
Gerhard Berger's approach was slightly different. The string of bizarre practical jokes that he played on Senna ultimately had the effect of restoring the Brazilian sense of humour, but it was a close-run thing.
He was an animal. I mean, you couldn't joke with him because he would go one better and one better, or one worse. Yes. I mean, throwing up the Ayrton's briefcase out of the helicopter as they were landing. Ayrton was very upset. Imagine your briefcase with passport, money, address book. Did
you see Ayrton change over those 2 years?
Yes. No, he was much more relaxed, and I suppose was the fact, not just the fact that they were friends, and it's the fact that he was always quicker than Gerhard. He was never going to be threatened by Gerhard like he was with Prost.
It didn't prevent a pretty grisly end to that season, and another season-long battle with Alain Prost, who was now at Ferrari.
And and Senna sprints away, but Alain Prost takes the lead. It's happened. Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner, but what has happened to Prost? He has gone off too.
Yes, and that makes Ayrton Senna world champion this year.
How bad was that in terms of things you've seen in Formula One?
That was pretty bad. And I was very upset inside me. I thought, bloody hell, he could have done it without doing that. Why did he have to do it? And I remember they had their accident and they both walked. They didn't even look to each other. They walked to the pit. And as Ayrton came in the garage, we were all looking at the television. And he turned around and he said to me, they're not going to stop the race. And I said, no, I don't think so. But inside me, I wanted to stop the race.
Did you?
Very much. I thought it was unfair, I think.
The wrong way to win it, yeah.
And yes, and you know, at the end of the year after is when he actually confessed and he said that was payback.
Did your respect for him diminish at that time, or?
Yes, I think I saw him with different eyes.
To many in the sport, Ayrton Senna ended 1990 with a much damaged reputation. Jo Ramirez would see the manner in which he restored respect over the next 3 seasons and would also play his part in taking another great McLaren driver to the World Championship title.
Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately. This is amazing. Senna goes off at the first corner.
After the acrimonious climax to the 1990 season, 1991 saw Ayrton Senna take a much calmer route to the world title. He had season-long support both off and on the track from Gerhard Berger, who was due to get his race-winning reward if Senna clinched the title at Suzuka. But for Jo Ramirez, this Japanese Grand Prix provided another insight into the mindset of Senna.
The plan was for Gerhard to start in front and Ayrton second, and with Mansell behind. So if that happened to see at the start, that was the ideal. That's what we planned. And then we would left Gerhard to going away, and Ayrton driving on his mirrors with Mansell trying to pass him everywhere. And by then, Gerhard would make a good lead. And as it happened, exactly like that, you know.
Mansell harrying Ayrton Senna, and off! That Mansell, that's him. Mansell out, and the World Championship has been won by Ayrton Senna.
Was Nigel that easy to read, that easy to predict you could come up with a plan like that?
Yes, Nigel.
Great driver.
Great driver, but he was always hard. He never used his head. And the plan was for Gerhard to win the race. But then after that, Ayrton started catching lap record after lap record. And then Ron on the walkie-talkie, Ayrton, remember the deal, remember the deal. What deal? Remember the deal. What are you talking about? You know, but he knew the deal. He did it
in a very deliberate way, though, wasn't it?
Okay. I don't know what he said. And then just on the last lap, and just pull over and slowly took his foot off, and Gerhard passed it to him. Gerhard said, yeah, but that's not how I wanted to win. No, very badly. But yeah, that was Ayrton. He wanted to put his stamp. I'm the winner, I'm the master.
Senna's last season with McLaren would be 1993. There'd be no World Championship, and there were strong indications he was heading to Williams. But for Jo Ramirez, that year also produced perhaps the greatest exhibition of Senna's control and determination. The rain-soaked opening laps of the Grand Prix of Europe at Donington.
Without a doubt, was the best 2 laps of any race I've ever seen.
Prost gets away well, so does Hill, so does Schumacher. Senna is crowded out and is down to 5th position.
At the start of the race, I look at the Williams. I think the Williams are on dry tires, hoping that it's going to get dry, and they're taking a chance.
And Ayrton Senna is up to 4th position ahead of Schumacher and challenging Wendlinger as they go round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to 3rd.
And I look, no, they're in wet tires, the same as us.
He muscled his way back into the contention at Redgate. He's going inside Damon Hill, and Senna into 2nd place already.
his magic absolutely mesmerized those 2 laps.
And Senna goes through into the lead. He's passed Alain Prost, so the McLaren leads. Prost second, Hill is third.
I think they're the best 2 laps of any Grand Prix in the history of the sport.
But at this time, and to a certain extent the season before, the approaches have started coming in from Williams. How conscious were you of those? Did you have any discussions with Ayrton about what the future might hold beyond 92,
yes,
93?
but at the time Honda was kind of on the side, pulling out or not. And perhaps he had more close information than we did. And it was an argument that it was difficult to beat him, but he said, look, I won races with Lotus, I won races, lots of races with McLaren, and I won championships with McLaren. And I don't want people to say, oh, it's because McLaren is the best car and he's always winning, you know. I think you have to complement to your career as a racing driver. I had to win with different cars, not just races, championships, with different cars.
Senna's last race for McLaren was at Adelaide. On the podium would come a reconciliation with the new world champion Alain Prost, whose seat at Williams he would be taking for the next season. Senna's victory in Australia would make McLaren the most successful team in history, and Ramirez recalls plenty of emotion on the grid before the start.
I went down in the cockpit and he just grabbed my arm and he said, oh, I feel very, very strange to do this on a McLaren for the last time. And I said, but you feel strange, why, how you feel, we feel, and we don't want you to go, you know, you're going on your own. And then I said, I don't need to tell you how important this race is for us, but if you win it, I love you forever. And then I saw his eyes, they were kind of watering, you know, he got very emotional. But he was an emotional guy, I'll say, good Latin. But it didn't affect him, you know, so it affected me more. I said, oh, bloody hell, I'm getting him emotional just before the start.
Of the race. Yes.
But won the race and we become the most successful Grand Prix team. And then we had a party, fantastic. And after the race, it was the Tina Turner concert, and he pulled him into the stage and sing
Simply the Best.
Simply the Best. So you can imagine the crowd was just unreal.
It was a high point on which to leave McLaren, but in 1994 Senna would be only 3 races into his new life with Williams when he came to Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix, in which he was to lose his life. Even with a new team, Jo Ramirez at McLaren was still the man that he would call for help and assistance, even on that fateful weekend.
He called me on Saturday and he said, you mind to do a favor for me? I said, whatever, why not? You know, we're still friends. We are on different teams, but we're still friends. And you see, he said, in Williams, we don't have anybody that help us like you did at McLaren. You know, we have to arrange our own things, and you know everybody here in Imola. And could you get me a helicopter to take me to Fort Lee, where I have my plane after the race? Oh, that'll be a pleasure, you know. So I did that, and at the drivers' meeting, I told him that he was a bit happier at the drivers' meeting because the car was a bit better in the warm-up. And I just gave him the registration of the helicopter and the name of the pilot and so on, and where he was expecting it. And that was it. And she looks a bit happier, but...
Never made the flight, of course. So, and there was also that reconciliation with him and Alain Prost. And
they have lunch that day. And this is something sad because I'm sure they were going to become good friends. Because it's sad that that didn't happen.
For Jo Ramirez, 18 years at McLaren and over 100 Grand Prix wins, every driver seems to have provided him with a different kind of challenge or a different kind of satisfaction. He will certainly pick out the talent of double world champion Mika Häkkinen and the team ethic of David Coulthard. And there was a brief experience of Nigel Mansell.
I remember Patrick Head said, I can't tell you anything about Nigel because you wouldn't believe it. You have to live the experience. 3 months down the road, by God, I know exactly what he meant.
But contrast that with Mika Häkkinen, who must have given you some great seasons and been a pleasure to work with, I should think.
Mika was a great guy to work with. He was our test driver for couple of years he'd not done. He really ready to go, any opportunity. So when we say goodbye to Michael Andretti in Monza, Mika was doing Portugal, the first race, and out-qualified Ayrton Senna. Would you believe? He had the biggest smile ever. He couldn't take it off his face.
When in 1998 Häkkinen's first world title celebrations were abbreviated in order to make way for a McLaren tyre test, Jo Ramirez was starting to feel that the sport was losing the spontaneity that he had come to love.
Me personally, I was very upset about it because once a party animal, always a party animal.
You're in charge of the party.
I think we should have celebrated. And I felt sorry because Mika knew how much we celebrate, and I said, well, what the hell, I won. What happened? Why don't we celebrating as much? We were getting more and more corporate.
Yes.
It's probably the right word or wrong word.
Was that an ingredient in your decision to step down, to call it a day? And
yes,
how tough a decision was that?
It's always, to me, it was never a job, it was a way of life. It was my hobby, and find somebody that paid me to do it, and it was great. So I enjoy every single second of my life, and I found that the last year you have to do so many things to get the sponsors happy. There's so much more to do beside the racing cars that is not as pleasant, you know. Like the first day I get up in the morning and say, "Oh, I got to go to work." That's the time to stop, and already that last year I had that. And
well, the
so
team certainly appreciated what you've done, because at Indianapolis, I think David Coulthard and Mika put together a little presentation which came as a bit of a surprise to you, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Fantastic. David Coulthard came up from one door with a leather jacket, and then Mika Häkkinen come the other side. And, oh, happy birthday. And, oh, a leather jacket. So I just turn around and I see Harley Davidson. And I said, great, all I need is the bike, you know. And I put the jacket, and they get me in their shoulders, and they walk me out of the motorhome. And as they're walking out, I hear this Harley Davidson. Even now.
It's a reflection of how I think the whole pit lane regarded your presence in the sport. McLaren man through and through, and a racing man through and through. Jo Ramirez, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.